Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Thursday, June 12th, 2025, episode 412, and we're going to talk about nuclear war and how it used to scare people. So the United States was evacuating non-essential personnel from bases and embassies in the Middle East. I saw a meme where over the last 30 years, Netanyahu, the prime minister or president of Israel, whatever, was warning that Iran was this close to having a nuclear weapon. Um, Anti-ICE protests are spreading to other cities. And of course, people are saying troops are going to be sent to those other cities. I don't know, it smells like martial law or something like it. I don't know. It's just so bizarre that the mayors of those cities are, encouraging. Oh, and those police siren, it's not. They're not anti-ICE protesters, I am hoping. But anyway, all the windows are open. Uh, we had windows replaced at the house, and that's because the siding was flying off the house, and so I had the siding replaced. And the dude said, "Well, if you do the siding, you got to do the windows too." So thankfully, the church was able to swing it. I was able to find a contractor that didn't break the bank. Uh, and basically, FYI, heads up, if you didn't know yet, but the nationally advertised or the heavily advertised companies generally are like twice as expensive as the small contractor, right? The small business people. And that's because they don't have to pay for the salespeople, the marketing, the people who do the paperwork, the people who do the estimates and take the orders, all that stuff. It's a much more compact system. So the company I used, the owner of the company is the one who meets with you, gives you the estimate, measures all of the windows, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can keep costs low and therefore make the job a little bit less expensive. Sorry, got on a little sidetrack. So basically, we use window unit air conditioners, and I wasn't able to put them in because new windows were coming in, and it's such a pain to put in window units, especially because you got to do all this extra stuff to try to keep the bugs out and try to keep as much of the cool air in and the hot air out and all, etc. Such a pain. So anyway, I didn't want to have to do that twice, and so all the windows are open and you can hear all of the traffic outside. Anyway, um, it always surprises me that in those anti-ICE protests or BLM protests or Antifa protests, that they can attempt to kill police, by throwing bricks and cinder blocks, but the police can't do anything. Like they're shooting paintballs. I mean, they don't even have water cannon trucks. It's just so weird in the United States how they treat protesters with kid gloves, and I was saying yesterday how they would use tear gas that is unfit for use on human beings against people in Asia. So why not here as well? I don't know. It's just weird. What I did notice was that the Marines that were sent to LA, they were doing riot training, right? I recognize it from some of the videos that I saw when I was in Korea, like riot police strategies of how to cut off and encircle and then cut off protesters so you can arrest them. I saw a little bit of that. Anyway, uh, and even if they do arrest some people at these protests, they release them almost right away, especially if they're fed, right? Meanwhile, U.S. foreign policy is a mess. The war in Ukraine keeps going. I saw, I think, I don't know if I heard the answer, but I saw the question raised, is Israel helping Ukraine? What? What money do they have? Oh, what money does the Ukraine have? Oh, yeah, all from the United States, right? So I'm sure you've seen those memes where there are missiles. going from one side to hit the other side, and that side is shooting missiles to shoot the side that first shot those missiles, right? And so, and the caption is our tax dollars, and then the other side is somehow our tax dollars too, and that's what's happening right now. It's just insane. We fund terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda group in Syria right now, and they turn around and they attack another group that's being funded by the United States. It's insanity. Uh, why it continues and why there isn't more protest is beyond me. I mean, I mention it in every place I go, talk about it, but everyone is always surprised whenever I bring it up. Um, a lot of people also don't know how to deal with Israel's takeover of the US government, right? Our foreign policy is largely Israel's foreign policy. And of course, they lobby and influence elections here in the United States with the money that we sent them, which again is insane. So we send them money, they use that money to influence the elections here, and no one really seems to make a big deal out of it. And if they did, they won't be reelected. It's just so bizarre. And finally, the whole time, the United States is poking countries that have nuclear weapons, right? Russia and China, especially. I mean, these countries have nuclear weapons. And where Trump is going on, like, oh, he's crazy. Oh, we're going to do something. You know, it's like, what is going on? This is like clown world in full display, right? People used to post memes about, oh, that president will take us to World War III, a nuclear war, right? So in Trump's first term, everyone was afraid, oh, he's going to take us to World War III. Uh, but then when Biden became president, they embraced the idea. And now that they got the ball rolling with Biden, now that Trump is in his second term, yeah, we're continuing to poke those bears with nuclear weapons, because nothing could possibly go wrong, right? And it seems that a lot of these people who don't really seem to mind about nuclear war is that everyone loses in a nuclear war. Maybe they don't care, but I mean, it's just how stupid can you be, really? There used to be something called MAD, M-A-D, Mutual Assured Destruction. And that was the strategy that was, or the mindset that was developed early on in like the 1960s, right? There was an arms race between the Soviet Union and the United States, who could build more nuclear weapons than the other, delivery systems better than the other. And so each country built more bombs than were needed to destroy the entire world, not just civilized world, not just each other, but everything in the world. I think it was like 7 or 9 times over, right? That's how many nuclear weapons were created. And it got so absurd that they were like, okay, let's have SALT talks, SALT, the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaties. And they started downsizing, right? And like, come on, this is ridiculous. Let's start downsizing. But here we are right back at it again. It's just so insane. And so mutual assured destruction then was the United States realizing that we're all going to die. This is not going to be good for the world. So the US then had the strategy that if there was a nuclear attack, because it won't be the United States that does the first launch. I don't know if people today can believe it, that there once was a time where most people in the United States, right, maybe one or two people wanted to be the fir the side that launches nuclear weapon first, but 99.9 I mean, you couldn't find a person who wanted the United States to be the country to launch first. Right? Everyone thought, well, if it's going to happen, the Soviet Union is going to launch first because they're crazy over there, right? And so the U.S. strategy was that if that were to happen, that the Soviets were to shoot missiles first, then the U.S. would have a definitive second strike strategy. that if they shot even one missile or launched one plane, then the United States would basically launch everything, right, and destroy everything in the Soviet Union, right? And that second strike strategy would be conducted with uh, bombers, right? B-52 bombers that were carrying nuclear weapons. They would do it from the air. Then you have missiles from permanent missile bases all over the United States. And then you have nuclear submarines, which stay underwater for a full year at a time, right? Just cruising around the waters of the world, waiting for that order to shoot their nuclear missiles at the Soviet Union, which is now Russia. They're still doing it, but now they're aimed at Russia. But now we're seeing a normalization of using nuclear weapons. I don't know if you've seen it, but I've seen it where people are like, yeah, well, we're going to launch nukes if things go wrong, because we got nukes. Ugh. And so it was kind of upsetting to me in the movie Dune, right? The re-release of that movie. I've watched it, right? But in the second part, they used the quote, family atomics, unquote, right? Basically, the family's nuclear weapons, right? But they bring it up and they use it like it's not a big deal, right? Who cares about radiation? Who cares about fallout from that radiation? I mean, apparently it's not an issue. How, I do not know. But after you use a nuke, there's radiation poisoning. People die later, right? And then the land becomes unlivable, right? And then whoever were to survive a war like that, they would either starve if they didn't die of radiation sickness. So this is just, it's so bizarre that people are going to talk about this like they're putting an order in for dinner. It's crazy. And it's so casual, right? As if it's just a big bomb, right? Oh, let's just have a limited nuclear war. What? Are you serious? It's very bizarre. I don't know. Makes me makes me nuts every time I hear people casually just say it like that. Maybe I'm hanging out with the wrong people. Who knows? And it's the same people who try to get rid of all the nuclear power plants, right? For energy. Right? Oh, we can't use nuclear. That's so dangerous. But hey, nuclear weapons, nuclear war, sure, let's do it. It's kind of weird, right? So I guess it's like the war argument. If you've never seen it, you don't fear it. Like you think that it's not such a big deal, and so you might sign up and because you're so eager to kill those evil people. Well, I've never seen war. I've seen lots of pictures, I've seen movies, but I don't want it. I've never seen a nuclear explosion, but I don't want it. Why is it that people who advocate this, uh, it's almost like bad thing, whatever negative consequence, it won't touch them, right? Maybe because they're too virtuous, because they're on the right side, that maybe that's it. They're going to survive because they're on the right side. Hey, it might even be fun, right? We can roast marshmallows over the radiation, but it's all worth it because the people we're dropping those nukes on, they're that evil. And that always makes me laugh because they're probably no evil than those who advocate nuclear war, right? Because the people who advocate or push for or try to create the circumstances where there will be a nuclear war, those people are truly, truly evil, right? And once you're evil, I don't think you can have a pissing contest, right? Who is more evil, this person or that person, right? It's just, am I more evil than you because I can blow up the world 4 times and you can only blow it up 3 times? I don't know. Evil is evil. And it seems to me that too many people today are extremely narrow-minded and short-sighted, right? There's a complete lack of regard for life. I've talked about this before when I asked my class, is it okay to punch a Nazi? And a bunch of people said yes, because they're narrow-minded and short-sighted. They were narrow-minded because they didn't know what a Nazi was. And apparently a Nazi is someone else pointed at, oh, now I know that person's a Nazi because that person pointed at him, right? And then short-sighted, like you don't think it through. What happens if you punch that Nazi, right? What will happen after that? And so people are too narrow-minded and short-sighted, and protesters who get in other people's faces and block traffic, so annoying, right? Because they feel that their cause is more important than the lives and livelihood of everybody else. And I bet that their food, where they stay, everything that they enjoy, the protesters enjoy in life, are being provided by the very people they're trying to antagonize and harass on the streets. It's just so crazy. They're so narrow-minded. They're so short-sighted. They are so hypocritical. So I'm always hoping that there's still some sane people out there, but the behavior of our politicians is extremely disturbing, right? Flying over to Ukraine saying, yeah, I know what our president says, but forget him. We're going to support you. I mean, what? That's extremely disturbing. And then the immaturity of our president right now, he hears something and says, I don't know what's wrong with them. Something happened to them. They're crazy, right? They've changed. It's like a guy who's in a relationship, right? And all of a sudden, because they stop making out all the time, they actually have a conversation and they're like, whoa, you changed. That person did not change. You never took the time to get to know that person, right? And so it's like, I feel like Donald Trump is like this guy who's in his own little fantasy world. And whenever something happens that he didn't think of, it's like, what happened to them? They're so crazy, right? They changed. It's so bizarre. Uh, and it's all on the world stage. If he acted like that and he was just running Apprentice, that TV show you used to have, which I watched a lot. I watched like every episode of the first and second season, I think. Uh, like if he did it there, I mean, who cares? He's just entertaining us. But as the president of the United States, where everyone is looking at him and then commenting on it and then saying, wow, what kind of person would vote for that clown? Right? In the same way that American mass media would parade around that Iranian president who is more of a uh, figurehead than a person who actually had power. But Americans love pulling him out, showing video of this guy and the ridiculous things that he would say. Well, I think that's what they're doing in other countries when it comes to the United States. Look what he said today. Listen to what he said. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? How do you think he's going to roll it back? And I heard someone commenting on who studied Trump a while ago, a long time ago when he was younger, when the book Art of the Deal came out, and he studied him and tried to understand and get into his head. You don't think that other people in other countries did the same thing? And so they're advisors to their nation's government, and they say, yeah, when he says that, this is what really means. You really want to upset him? Do this, do that, right? It's just Donald Trump reveals too much of what he's thinking, right? And politics, diplomacy is not conducted that way. So I'm ashamed. I am embarrassed, right? And I used to be proud. When I thought that this country stood for freedom, I was really proud. I mean, I stuck my chest out when I went to Korea. I think I mentioned this before. And I was like, I'm from America, man. And then I find out, right, looking at these Koreans living in an authoritarian regime, and this was in the 1990s, right? It was very authoritarian. But I realized that America, in some ways, was more authoritarian. And I was very confused. And right now, the United States, we're running on inflation, inflated egos as well as inflated dollars. And why is this so important? Why am I bringing this up? And I've mentioned it before, but it's important because these same narrow-minded, short-sighted people think that the United States still has military dominance. Yeah, they couldn't beat the Yemenis, right, in Yemen, the Houthis, right? You couldn't beat them, right? These supposed primitive, uh, desert nomads. You couldn't beat them, right? They still denied shipping to Israel in the Red Sea, right? 60% of America's nuclear submarines are non-operational. I heard Colonel McGregor mention that statistic. We're using B-52s for missile delivery, right? B-52s, come on, it's not like they're stealth bombers. I mean, seriously, unless you're going to say, oh, it's just a political propaganda tool. Okay, fine. But also, 60% of the nuclear submarines are not operational, so I think it's more than just decoration. And then what about those missiles, right? The third leg of the triad of nuclear war deterrence. Who's manning them? Who trained them? How woke are they? How nutty are they that they're eager and they want to push that button? It's just kind of bizarre. Just how many people are unqualified in some way in the military or the DoD, right? Mentally, or maybe being unqualified for the position that they hold. For example, officers who are promoted because they brown nose the best, not because they are the best, but they kiss butt, that they suck up to the right people the best. There's a lot of bad out there, right? I didn't even talk about hypersonic missiles this time around, but I think we're living in a different kind of world, and too many Americans are too narrow-minded and short-sighted to see that it's not 1990 anymore. So again, I say, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and I'll talk to you next time.